Thank you very much, Todd. Really nice to be here with all of you. Thank you for inviting me, and I really hope we're going to have a nice time together. So the idea here is that I encountered a pain point during the development of my perhaps applications. It was that the native label control had an auto height property, so that the height of your label would resize depending on its content. But I wanted to have the same thing for the width. And natively in Perhaps you don't have this. And so I thought, how can I solve this problem? But first, in which cases can we encounter this need? In fact, for instance, when you make an application where you have tabs which are right next one to the other, and of course maybe the label and the content of your tab varies during the app execution. If I change the label here, you see that if it's too long for the width of the label, then you have these ellipses showing up, and you don't see the label in its full length. You see what I mean? So this is one case. For instance, in tabs, you can encounter the same problem in menus. If you make a multilingual application where often, according to the language, length of a translation varies a lot between French, English, German, etc. This can be really tricky, and usually what you do, you define width that is sufficient to hold any translation for the text you're trying to display, but it's not very handy because then you have white spaces between your tabs or your labels when the translations are short, etc. So it's not very nice to see. You can have the need of it also eventually on buttons, if you want your button to resize depending of its label, etc. So I thought, how can I solve this problem? So what I did is I'm going to try to explain to you how I got to the solution. What I did is that I'm going to show you here on the screen. I just put a simple label here. I put some text in it, and I've set its auto height property. I activated its auto height property, which means that whenever I will add some text, the text will wrap down to the next line. And of course, since I have activated auto height, the height of the label will change. And just to show you this, I've put another label here where I display the height of this label. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I want you to be very careful and look at what happens. So I'm going to resize the label here, and once I get to the last letter here, you see the last letter goes down to the next line, and so the height changed from 32 to 52. Okay, so I thought this is very interesting because this means that if I know that I have 20 A characters here and I reduce the size, and when it changes height, then I know that this exact width is the correct width for 20 A characters in this font and for this size. So if I divide the width of my label here, which have 20 A characters, by 20, I divide it by 20, then I know the size of one A character. I hope everybody is following what I'm trying to explain. Okay, and so the idea then was to determine and calculate for each character in the ASCII table what unitary size is for each character. So I wanted to build like a collection where I wouldn't have for the A character, when it's this font and this size, this is the exact size with 6 decimals, the exact size of one character. And then I would use this to calculate the width of the label, whatever is inside the label. Okay, so that's the main idea. But of course, I tried to find on the internet some resources giving me these values, giving me the sizes of each font, each font size, the size of a unitary character. But I didn't find it, so I decided to build it myself using Power Apps. And I'll show you how I did this. So I created an application here, which I call the Font Char Width Builder. So I'm going to zoom a little bit first to show you what happens. So I built this application in which I did exactly what I just explained. I have a label here where I put 20 times the same character, okay? And I start with the first character. I start with the space character, the number 32 in the ASCII table. And then I go to the next character, character 33 in ASCII table, and then 34, 35, 36, etc. Every time I set this character to this label, and then I have a timer which will reduce the size of the label here. And once I detect that the height changes, I know that the exact size of the label for 20 characters, and then I divide it and calculate the width of one unitary character. Okay, so I'll show you how it works very quickly. My PC is pretty slow, and so it doesn't detect the height change. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you the capture of what happens when I do this. Easier. I'm sorry about that. Okay. I'm going to zoom here. So in fact, in the application, in this builder, char width builder, you select the font for which you want to calculate the size of each character. And then you click start, and then it will go through all characters in the ASCII table. For each of these characters, it will, through a timer, reduce the size of the label until it sees the height variation, and then calculate, divide this width by 20 to identify the width of one instant of the character. And then every time it changes of character, I will store every unitary size of each character. As you can see here on the right side of the screen, I will store in a collection every size of each character. So if I select, as you can see it on the screen, the Arial font and the Lato font for the normal widths, font weight, bold font weight, etc., I will build a huge collection containing for each font weight, and each character its exact size. And once I have calculated the sizes for the fonts and the size, I click on the generate button, which will create a Power Apps formula that defines this huge collection as a code you can implement inside your application. So this is what I use to build, in fact, this huge collection of all characters in the ASCII table for all fonts and all font weights combinations. Okay, and the next step was to provide the community an easy way of using this huge collection inside one's application. So I made a component here, which is called the auto width label generator. Okay. When you will import it in your application, you will see exactly this. So you have to initialize the component so that loads up the whole huge collection. Okay. And once it has been initialized, you will see this screen. So here you will be able to select a font. Let's say I want Lato, and I want the normal font weight. That's it. You can select many font weights if you want. I'll just take normal, and then you will select a char set. Char set is it's a set of characters that you will, for which you would like to store in your application in a huge collection, the list of individual sizes for the characters. So I'll just take tiny, and then it will generate here, as you can see, a call to a set formula function, which will define a collection, a table, in fact, called char's width. Okay, And in that table, you will have for each character its unitary size. Okay. And how do you use this then? You just take this, you copy it, and then you go to your application. You go to the app on start event here. You paste it here. Since we are inside the editor, I'll just run the on start event directly from here. So now we have in memory a collection of all sizes for the characters from A to Z for the Lato font and normal font weight. Okay. And then I will go back to the component here, the auto width label generator. I will take this formula here, and this formula I will copy and paste it to my label for which I want to have auto width, and I'll put it on the width property here, right there. Okay, and I'll just remove the auto height. Paste. Okay, here. Let's put it back to the height to 40 here. And then for the width. And so what happens here is it's not working. Why? Because the collection I just added to my onStart event for the app stored all sizes for the Lato, normal, font, and font weight. And here I am in OpenSang, so it's not working. Okay, so I have to make sure that I select the correct font. So I'll take Lato here, normal, and here we go. Okay, and so now if I decide to change the content of my label here, you will see that the width will automatically adjust depending of its content. Okay, and the interesting thing is that it takes into account the fact that you might want to put some left and right padding to your label. So if I add some padding here and I put 25 pixels for left padding, as you can see, the formula that calculates the new widths takes into account these the left and right padding. Okay, so using this trick and using this component here, you will be able to adjust the widths of any label in your application in whatever font and font weight you want. Of course, the formula that calculates the widths also takes into account the font size. So here I have a font size of 13. So if I put 18, now the font just resizes according to the font size. Okay, so this is really interesting because now you can build screens where your labels and your tab labels, so I didn't implement it here, but I could, in fact, I can just take the same formula I put on my label here for the width. Copy and paste it here on my label here. First, I have to set the correct font again, Lato, all right? And I'll just put the X coordinate of this label next to the previous one, which is label 1. And there you go. So now, thanks to that formula, if I change the text of my tab label, it will just adapt itself, and the tab next to this one will follow its size, you see? And so that's how you will be able also to implement the same thing on buttons. So on buttons, it work just the same. My time is up.
This is great. Lots of cool feedback in there. Originally, when you said it was a component, I was thinking you're going to have to add it to the app as a component, but it's not really a component, is it? It's just a formula.
Yes.
That you built with an extremely impressive app to crank that OnStart code out in your formula. But that's great, so that you can use this in any Power App over and over. You don't need to get permission to deploy a component or anything.
Exactly. The only goal is to get this formula, which will initialize the like a collection of all sizes for the font and font weight you choose, and then copy paste this formula in your width property of your labels. And I just posted this weekend a new version of this component using the self operator in the formula, so that you don't have to change the label of your the name of your label. You see, so this so the formula works directly as soon as you paste it on the width property of your label. The only thing you have to understand, and this is very important, is that of course you see that the size of this collection here can be pretty huge. If you decide to generate this collection for many different fonts and many font weights, and you decide to take the full 255 characters in the char set, of course, as you can see now, it's my PC just hanged up. Well, it's going to generate a huge collection, and of course, performance would be a bit worse in your application. So the idea really is to select the font family and the font weight and the char set, really to have the minimum you need for what you want to do. For instance, that's what I use now for creating breadcrumbs, because breadcrumbs, often you have a level 1, and then you have this chevron icon, and then you have level 2. So that depending of the label of the level 1 and level 2 in your breadcrumb, the chevron would follow from left to right according to the widths, etc. So just make sure you just select the correct char set. If you want to have some information about what's in a char set, I've made a little table here showing you that for the tiny char set, you will have the space character, and then only characters from 0 to 9 and A to Z in uppercase and lowercase. For the minimum one, you will get also some other special characters, etc., etc. Okay.
That is incredible. I bet you spent a long time building this app. Your app looks great too, by the way.
Yeah, I decided to make a component because then you can just import it into whatever application. But I really recommend, and that's what I put on the forum, it's better if you put this component in a separate application, because the component itself holds the huge mega collection with all sizes for all fonts and font weights. So put it in a separate application, use it to generate the formulas, and just use the formulas in your application.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Gabriel from Romania. If there are multiple text inputs on the same page, did you saw some performance issues?
I don't think you will have any performance issues because you apply the formula to many labels on a screen. The performance problem will appear only if the collection you generate here is too big.
Okay. So if you select multiple fonts, but in Power Apps on a Canvas app, you wouldn't do that.
Yes, generally, exactly. That's correct. Generally, in a Power App application, you use one font, maybe two, but usually one font, probably 1 or 2 font weights, and that should be enough for your application. So the collection will be not too big. The only problem of performance is if the collection is too big there, but using the formula in many screens will not slow down your application. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
That's great.